Welcome to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast from the editors of Rider Magazine and RiderMagazine.com, bringing you motorcycling at its best in our magazine and on the web for 46 years, and now in our regular podcast. This is Mark Tuttle, editor of Rider. Today I'm going to share a bit of news from the world of motorcycling, after which we will speak with Kevin Wing, our photographer extraordinaire of many years here at Rider Magazine. Well, we're recording this in early April, and I'm reminded of that Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Here at Rider, our hearts go out to any and all of you affected by the pandemic, and the loss of life has obviously been tragic, and here's hoping that we get past this sooner rather than later. There's been a lot of challenges for the motorcycle industry. Factories have closed, and a lot of dealers are only able to work with customers online. But there have been some bright spots as well. One of our local dealers here is taking appointments so that you can show up at the dealership and wait outside, and they will actually bring the bike out to you to look at. And if I'm not mistaken, I would say this is probably a good time to wheel and deal with dealers who are doing business that way. And of course, service departments and parts departments are still offering their services in one form or another because they're considered essential services. Another bright spot would be that apparently many of you are still getting out and riding. We sent a survey to our e-news subscribers recently on what people are doing and thinking about COVID-19, and one of the primary responses of interest was that 58% of you are still getting out and riding. Obviously, this has to be done with more care than usual, and not just in terms of spreading the virus, but also to make sure that you don't increase the problem at our hospitals, but done safely and thoughtfully, we think it's great. Before I move on to a happier subject, I just want to give a shout out to some of our industry friends who have been making a difference in this pandemic struggle. For example, Yamaha Motor Manufacturing in Georgia, which donated nearly 400 respirators and lots of PPE to their local hospital. Honda has given more than $1 million to food banks and meal programs, as well as PPE and even some 3D printing equipment so that first responders could make masks for themselves and so on. And Polaris donated more than $200,000 in technology to meet the needs of students homeschooling in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So our helmets are off to you guys for helping in this time of need. I would encourage all of our listeners to send in any news about good deeds during the pandemic from motorcyclists or the motorcycle industry that you hear about, so that we can share them on our website and in the magazine. All right, shifting gears to new bikes. I think that without a doubt the most interesting machine to get introduced virtually during the pandemic, which a lot of manufacturers have had to resort to. We've rather than going to an event, riding event, or a reveal at some lunch spot or what have you, nowadays we are watching presentations on our computer monitors prior to writing up new models. And again, one of the most interesting to be introduced this way is BMW's new R18 Cruiser. It's powered by a massive 1800cc air oil-cooled 4-valve opposed twin in traditional boxer fashion, and this one has been nicknamed the Big Boxer because it's the largest one that BMW has ever produced for a motorcycle. That's for sure. Generates a claimed 91 horsepower, somewhere around there, and 160 pounds of torque, which is pretty impressive. I have to say that I was skeptical about BMW jumping back into the cruiser market when they revealed that they were planning to do that. But now that I see the finished product, I think that perhaps it was a good move. And you owe it to yourself to take a look on our website at ridermagazine.com at this gorgeous hunk of machinery, with the possible exception of the muffler, which probably had to be that large for Euro 5 considerations. I think it's just a gorgeous machine and should make a big splash among the traditional motorcycling crowd. Okay, you're listening to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. This is the editor of Rider, Mark Tuttle. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be picking up with our guest, Kevin Wing, our photographer of many years. Hang in there. Welcome back to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. Thanks for hanging with us. Today we're talking with Kevin Wing, who has been the magazine's photographer for many a year. In fact, I went back and tried to find the very first issue that he worked with us on, and it appears to be September of 1995, which would have been film, as I recall. Isn't that right, Kevin?
Absolutely, yeah. Back in the good old film days.
That was quite something because in those days, you shot everything on film, of course, and then you handed it off to a processor, right? And then you'd get everything back on slides.
Correct. Yeah, we would. It'd be a lot different process than we're doing nowadays. And essentially, we would put all of our slide canisters in a Ziploc baggie, drop them off at a nearby pro lab, and cross your fingers a little bit and make sure everything came out just so.
And how long were you shooting prior to working with us?
I kind of launched my career at Motorcyclist magazine in roughly 1992. I got invited out to do kind of a test shoot for them, and it was the Ducati 851 out at Willow Springs, and that's really what launched me right there.
That was a fantastic motorcycle. I still remember riding that up Deer Creek and just yelling in my helmet the whole way. Yeah, well, a little more background on Kevin for you folks who aren't aware. He doesn't just shoot motorcycles, but he's done cars and planes, isn't that right, Kevin? And boats and a number of other things.
Absolutely, yeah. If it burns gas, usually we shoot it, and that's been primarily motorcycles, on and off-road motorcycles. I worked my way into some car stuff for Motor Trend magazine, and I've shot ATVs, UTVs, some boats, plane-to-plane photography with some small aircraft, and a few other things I'm probably leaving out. But the main focus has always been motorcycles.
Yeah, and always with a permit, right?
Absolutely, yes. For the record, always with a permit.
Yeah, always with a permit. What would you say the hairiest moment is that you experienced while shooting?
Oh boy, there's been so many. I mean, usually photographers will go to, just about any length to get the shot, and whether that's scaling up a 100-foot cliff to get an overhead shot or get a good vantage point, or strapping yourself to the roof of a moving vehicle, or shooting out of a helicopter, etc. It can be quite exciting, but I mean, there's so many different stories in particular.
Yeah. I bet some equipment has gone overboard in the process too, huh?
Uh,
Expensive.
def, Definitely, yeah. I had that happen one time in particular. I was shooting watercraft, and I wanted to have the model come over and just do a big turn, and he was turning towards the boat, and unfortunately, he came in with a little bit too much enthusiasm and proceeded to absolutely swamp us where we were shooting. And of course, I had my camera bag wide open, so immediately went into panic mode. So
Oh God, salt
had
water.
to. It wasn't salt water; it was a
Oh,
lake up in Montana area. But it took. I've never dried off gear and dumped out camera bags as quick as that, and had to let them dry out on a dock. Yeah.
yeah. That brings up a good point. Back in the film days, I mean the like the Canon. What was the top end Canon back then? Do you recall? I mean, you could hammer nails with those things. They were indestructible, and we never worried about packing them on the bike or stuff like that because they just didn't have all of the sensitive electronics that today's digital cameras do. So you've got this now. You have these $6,000 and $7,000 camera bodies that you never let them anywhere near the motorcycle. Kevin generally rides with a backpack most of the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've always done that, even back in the film era. Like you say, they've got more things to potentially be basically not survive heavy vibration, water, and things like that. But yeah, you don't want to like say I use a backpack and just to minimize the vibration as opposed to tying down. Cameras to a tank bag or a saddle bag and that sort of thing. It's just it's a dicey proposition. You need your gear to work, and yeah, right nowadays a top of the line pro action camera goes for about $6,500. So
My goodness,
I
wow.
always try to take it easy on them because they take good care of me.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, um, I should sing your praises a little bit here because the very first issue that Kevin did with us was September of '95, and I believe it was a BMW comparison. And even back then with film, crackerjack sharpness and composition and beautiful color, and that's why we've continued to use Kevin to this day. Um, and the best part is that we always have a lot of fun going out on these photo shoots because he's got a great sense of humor as well. So we spend a lot of time laughing while we're working until the sun goes down. Sometimes 8:30 at night up in the mountains. But it's always a pleasure, and I just wanted to say that before we go on. So, Kevin, what's your favorite piece of equipment in your vast arsenal?
I'd have to say, I'm still keen to use the telephoto lenses whenever I can, and that would be 300 millimeter and above, 500 millimeter range is what I like to capture high action in. That said, you can of course shoot action at any focal length, but my specialty was really the razor sharp long lens photos over the years.
Right. Is there a single piece of advice that you would give a aspiring photographer who's trying to shoot some action, other than obviously don't do it on public roads and be safe and sane?
Yeah, well, there's a ton of advice. As a matter of fact, Canon USA approached me, and there is a YouTube video that was done about 4 years ago where I go into detail about tips for shooting vehicles in motion. So if anybody wants to look that up and basically just type in Kevin Wing and Canon or tips for shooting vehicles in motion, they'll be able to get a lot of specific information.
Oh, yeah, terrific. I remember that video. It was quite good. Yeah, I think would you consider that to be the biggest challenge in shooting motorcycles is getting the action stuff sharp?
Yeah, I mean it's a trade off. Of course, you want to get sharp images to a degree, meaning the rider and motorcycle, but you also want to get the background to blur out a bit, and some spinning wheels as well. So that's kind of what you're juggling. It depends on, how sharp you want to get it. I'd love low shutter speed, say anything below a 1/25th of a second, but those images become very, very low percentage. They're very dynamic shots, but most of the time you do need to capture the bike. Hey, people want to see the bike, see the latest, greatest bike, and maybe not quite as artsy, but
Yeah.
love to do both.
Yeah, those low shutter speed images, those are the ones where you have us going back and forth in the corner like 25 times, right?
Maybe once or twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I should say, I have a tendency to work people fairly hard, but, and thankfully they're willing to do it. And ultimately, I think we get what we went out there for.
Well, yeah, and when you get down to it, we're just out riding motorcycles for the most part. I mean, the weather's not always perfect. It can be 110 degrees and you're wearing lots of gear, and but for the most part, it's still pretty fun, I have to say.
Yeah, like you say, we're always having some laughs, and I'll tell you what, if you're out there, creating some great shots, and like you say, the days are long, and if you can keep it light, and it really comes through in the photography too, if everybody's having a good time.
So, how did you get started doing this?
Well, I mean, way back in the beginning, it was just a matter of me borrowing my dad's old Minolta, film camera. I used to shoot some motocross races way back in the day, Carlsbad and things like that. I was just a kid, hanging, barely able to get my head over the fence, and shooting guys like Marty Smith and Bob Hanna way back when. But
Oh, at Carlsbad, huh?
yeah,
Wow.
Carlsbad and Saddleback. I went to some of those races. I mean, I've been, just did it as a hobby for many years, and with Southern California activities, whether it was surfing or water skiing, motorcycle riding. I was very fortunate that I grew up with some very active parents, adventurous parents at the time, and that's where I got my start way back when. But you know. One of the big influences for me was I was a full-time photo assistant, actually for a period of close to 4 years. I worked for a wide range of photographers. There was one photographer in particular, Rich Cox, who you know well, and is a contributor to Rider Magazine. And I tell you what, he was a very prominent action sports photographer, and really was a great launch pad for me, a learning opportunity to see what he was doing, and see if I wanted to pursue motorsports related photography.
Oh, yeah. I know you have a lot of great stories from the old Rich and Kevin days.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy and a close personal friend still to this day. And prior to his semi-retirement, we used him a lot for as many of our longtime readers will recall. So, Kevin, switching gears for a moment here, what do you think is maybe the weirdest thing, strangest thing a client's ever asked you to do or shoot?
Oh, there's been a ton of things. One thing in particular that I think a lot of other photographers would have a problem topping was I was doing an assignment for Sport Rider magazine, and it was Kent, and they were doing a helmet comparison test, and they wanted to show these helmets in a different way. And basically, I was able to drag him behind my van while I took pictures of him out at the racetrack and get paid money for it. So I think that was a pretty unique experience.
Drag him on the asphalt?
Correct. Drag him. The lead shot was him basically in a simulated crash, but he was with leathers and helmet scraping the ground, and I was a couple feet off him, and we were taking repeated shots, dragging him on the tarmac at a racetrack. So, and like I said, and got paid for the experience. So
That's pretty good. And I know for a fact that Kent still has all of his arms and limbs, so he survived the ordeal.
yes, he did.
Well, this is Mark Tuttle, editor of Rider Magazine, and you're listening to the Rider Magazine Insider podcast. We are going to take a short break here. We're speaking with Kevin Wing and our photographer, and we'll pick up with him right after the break. Welcome back to the Rider Magazine Insider podcast. Thanks for hanging with us. I'm Mark Tuttle, editor of Rider Magazine, and we are talking with Kevin Wing, our photographer of many years. And before the break, we were talking a bit about cameras and his background and all that stuff. But and don't forget to check out Kevin's YouTube video about shooting motorcycles and other vehicles in motion. It's easily found online, and it's quite good. Lots of great tips there and advice. Kevin, you're also quite an accomplished motorcycle rider. In fact, truth be told, it's been one of my dreams to get you on the staff someday, but that's not in the cards right now.
Oh, come on now. Come on now. It might be a great time for that big contract I've been waiting to drop.
Yeah. It's a little strange time for all of us, sheltering at home during this pandemic, and the workflow isn't what it used to be. So, but Kevin, I know that you recently sold an FC1, but you still have your dirt bikes and get out there and ride pretty regularly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say my heart is more with dirt bikes. That's the way I started. Currently have a WR250F, and my son's got a little Honda CRF 230. And
Nice.
Been having an absolute blast just going out and doing some father-son rides.
Do you currently own a street bike, Kevin?
I just I've been thinning the herd a little bit. I've just recently, in the last couple of years, got rid of a little Supermoto 400 and my first generation FC1 Yamaha. And I'll tell you what, I'm kind of regretting selling both of those bikes right now. So just dirt bikes in the stable right now.
Yeah, I can't recall a motorcycle I owned and subsequently sold that I didn't regret selling. But sometimes you just have too many carburetors, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, going out on jobs with you guys, and on occasion I get to cycle through some amazing motorcycles. So it's nice to get a taste of all the latest technology.
It sure is. We're pretty blessed to be doing this stuff, and especially so at this particular strange point in history. So, well, Kevin, anything else you'd like to share with our Rider Magazine Insider audience?
Oh, I just say, as far as photography goes, definitely pack a camera on your rides, and hopefully your friends will be up for doing a few passes for you in some pretty spots. And take my advice, and if you can, put it on your back so you don't destroy your gear by strapping it to the bike. That would be one tip for me. But yeah, just have fun with it and see where it takes you.
To that point, what sort of backpack do you use?
I have an older Tamarack. I think it's called an Explorer backpack. They might not even make that exact model, but there's no shortage of camera backpacks. You want to get something as light as possible. I would caution you on getting the biggest possible one, because inevitably you will overfill it, and then you will end up like me with a 40-pound backpack. And particularly off-road, going through a whoop section, that can be pretty interesting. But if you can minimize, you don't need a lot of equipment if you're just out there having fun with it. So if you can minimize down to maybe one or two lenses at the most and one body, and hopefully it won't cramp your style too much or your back.
Kevin, thank you very much. Again, this is Mark Tuttle with the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. We appreciate you being with us today.
I appreciate your interest, and I tell you what, I really appreciated working with the whole Rider team over the years. Consider myself incredibly fortunate to be able to do what I do, and let's hope we can keep doing it.
You bet. We will be back at it in no time, I hope and pray. Thanks for listening to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. This is Mark Tuttle. Thanks for spending some of your valuable time with us. Feel free to reach out to us through our ridermagazine.com website, on our like-name social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or email us directly at rider@ridermagazine.com. Thanks again for listening. We appreciate your interest.